not many details about the history.
Okay, so we're going to get started. I don't even think I need this microphone. But so my name is Lynn Drinkwater, and I'm the program coordinator here at the Moore County Senior Enrichment Center. And I'm delighted that you came today, and I'm sorry that the crowd isn't as big as it was last week. It was 54 people came, which was amazing. And I think the topic, the history of Moore County, was very exciting for people. This one we couldn't really promote other than the history mystery, because last week Dr. Matt Farina came up with the idea, how about we give the people who come to the history of Moore County a chance to vote on which topic he'll present today. So today's topic is Dr. Mary Edwards Walker. And so this is a question that Matt wants to start out with, but I want to say thank you to Bowles Funeral for bringing refreshments on such last minute notice. And I apologize that there's not a bigger crowd for you. Come on in. Come on in. We'll take all the takers we can. But anyway, thank you so much for willing to come in and put this together at such last minute. I really appreciate it. So don't forget to get your cookies and water. And so anyway, I will give the microphone over to Matt. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt Farina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see if this works this time. I guess I just aim it up there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to start this talk about Mary Walker. I'm going to start it about Myra Bradwell. Mary became involved with women's rights movement after the Civil War. During her time in Washington, she undoubtedly impressed many people as being eccentric, bluntly forward, meddlesome, demanding, and out of place or even irrational. The terms paranoid and feminist had not yet been invented. She did not conform to what men felt was appropriate behavior for women. Because she was such an outlier in her behavior, it was easy for men to ignore her and what she was seeking or demanding. But I suspected that many women in Washington sided with her, but were too oppressed by society to openly support her. Bradwell is an example of the attitudes of the time that today we would think of as almost unthinkable. Myra Colby Bradwell came from a family of Revolutionary War patriots. Her parents were prominent in the anti-slavery movement in Illinois. She was intellectually gifted and started to read for the law following the marriage to a young attorney, James Bradwell. She was 38 when she took the Illinois bar exam and passed with the highest honors. Her husband helped her, and the two of them founded and operated the Chicago Legal News, which at the time was the most widely circulated legal newspaper. Her formal application for a law license was denied twice by the Illinois Supreme Court. First, quote, by reason of the disability imposed by your married condition, unquote. And then when that logic was questioned on appeal, it was denied simply because she was a woman. When Myra appealed to the United States Supreme Court, the country treated her lawsuit as a comedy. The press stated that the only way she could win was if all 9 justices went insane. The state of Illinois considered the case such a foregone conclusion that when oral arguments were heard before the Supreme Court in 1873, they did not even send an attorney to make a presentation. The vote was 8-1 against Myra, with the majority declaring in derogatory language that the idea of a married woman taking on a career independent of her marital status was, quote, repugnant, unquote, and must be resisted. This is from the Supreme Court decision. Quote, the paramount destiny and mission of woman are to fulfill the noble and benign offices of wife and mother. This is the law of the Creator, unquote. Only Chief Justice Simon P. Chase dissented with the decision. Now, there are echoes of that decision today. Now we can move to Mary. The Walker family was a 17th century New England family that settled in the Connecticut River Valley in Massachusetts. Alva Walker, the head of the family, decided to marry and 3 months later announced his intentions with Vesta Whitcomb. Her family was also an old New England family with ancestors in the French and Indian War and the American Revolution. They settled in Syracuse in central New York, a new village which was growing along the unfinished Erie Canal. Their first child died several days after birth. A year later, their second child, Vesta, was born. She was followed by Aurora, Luna, and Cynthia. After 10 years, the family left Syracuse for a 33-acre farm on the Bunker Hill Road in Oswego Town, 5 miles west of Oswego, New York. About the time Oswego was one of the boom towns in the United States. The Oswego Canal linked Lake Ontario to the Erie Canal, and by 1848, the population in Oswego was 11,000. This is a map of the area. Let's see if I can, I think there's a pointer here somewhere. Yeah, there's Syracuse. There's the Erie Canal. And there's Lake Ontario up here. And this is the Oswego Canal. Oswego sitting right on the lake there. Alva was a progressive farmer and carpenter, and he built the first schoolhouse in the county at his own expense. Mary Walker was born in Oswego Town on November 26, 1832, 3 months after the family had arrived. She was the sixth child, and she was named after Mary Edwards, Alva's maiden sister in Massachusetts. There were no boys, so on the farm, the girls carried out many of the chores ordinarily done by men. Mary possessed a nervous energy as a child. The home reflected the convictions of her much-traveled father, including the belief that girls should be educated and encouraged to pursue professional careers, such as teaching. Alva also stressed the importance of good health, diet, and exercise. Her parents believed girls should not wear tight-fitting clothing like the corsets and the long, heavy skirts of the time, which would restrict movement and deep breathing. Alva was also concerned about his own health and bought and read books on medicine. Mary later recalled that she dreamed of becoming a physician while thumbing through her father's medical books. Mary received a common school education in the one-room schoolhouse next to her home. Her older sisters had gone to the Faley Seminary in Fulton, and their interest in their studies also influenced Mary. She grew up at a time when isms were very popular in New England and upstate New York in general, including spiritualism, abolitionism, and temperance. The first women's rights convention was held in Seneca Falls in 1848. Amelia Bloomer and Elizabeth Smith Miller, daughter of the famous abolitionist Gerrit Smith, were leading advocates of the Bloomerite movement and visited Oswego in Bloomer attire. Mary attended Faley Seminary in Fulton for several terms. At age 19, she left the seminary to take a teaching position in the village of Minetto, just 5 miles from her home. In the several years she taught, her plans crystallized, and she decided she would become a physician. I'll turn this a little bit so I can see the slides too. The nation's rapid growth in population and expansion westward could not be matched by comparable growth in the number of doctors available. States then began to charter a host of medical colleges, and a few institutions even opened their doors to women, the sex barrier being broken by Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman physician in the United States, who was admitted to Geneva Medical School in 1847. Mary was admitted to Syracuse Medical College in December of 1853, just after her 21st birthday. The school had opened 2 years earlier with a faculty of 9 practicing physicians and a course of instructions consisting of 3 13-week terms with clinical practice with physicians in between the terms. Now, this was not the shortest training for physicians offered, but likewise, it was far from the longest. Tuition was $55 a term, and board and room were $1.50 a week. The college was identified as an eclectic institution and proclaimed the principle that, quote, nothing should be used as a remedy that will injure the human constitution, and that all means used should have a direct tendency to sustain and not depress the vital powers, unquote. That's not a bad philosophy to follow in medicine, even today. Yeah. She attended the winter and spring terms of 1853 to 54 and 54 to 55 and received instructions in anatomy, surgery, pathology, physiology, pharmacology, chemistry, obstetrics, diseases of women and children, and medical jurisprudence. She graduated with honors and received a medical degree in June of 1855, the only woman in her class, and became one of only a handful of female physicians in the nation. She started her practice in Columbus, Ohio, but after several months realized that Ohioans were reluctant to trust their medical care to a woman. She moved to Rome, New York, and joined a more successful practice. At medical school, Mary had met Albert Miller, a fellow classmate who was a gifted scholar and orator. He cut a dashing figure at school, and for both it appeared to be love at first sight. They parted after graduation, and Albert had established a practice in Rome. When Mary went off to Ohio, it was Albert's proposal of marriage and a common medical practice which ended her stay in Columbus. During her medical training, Mary experimented with her dress, seeking to simplify it and provide a more practical garb for her profession. She adopted a variation of the Bloomerite movement, and even at her wedding, appeared in trousers and a dress coat. The bride's obligation to obey her husband was dropped from the ceremony. Mary insisted upon retaining her own maiden name, only occasionally signing her name as Dr. Mary Miller-Walker. At the onset of the marriage, Mary appeared to have been an affectionate wife, and the union had the outward appearance of a good marriage. Then she began to receive reports of Albert's infidelity. She confronted him, and he admitted the charge. Mary asked him to leave and sought a divorce. Albert closed his part of the practice in 1859 and left Rome. And he disappears from history. I've tried searching for him, where he might have gone, where he might be buried. Albert Miller just disappears completely. Mary moved to a smaller office and concentrated more seriously on medicine for the next 2 years than any other period in her life. In the late summer of 1860, she sought an Iowa divorce, where adultery was a legal grounds for divorce. She lived a few months with friends in Iowa and then returned to Rome in May of 1861, but still not divorced. She then initiated action for divorce in New York, secured a favorable decision in the Supreme Court of Madison County, but the decree was never finalized. It would not be until 1869, after a special act of the state legislature to modify the statute of limitations, that because of her war service, that she was declared legally free from her estranged husband. During this busy time in her life, between 1850 January 1st, 1857, with a letter to Sybil, a new women's magazine. The editor was Dr. Lydia Sayer, also a physician, a journalist, and a dress reformer, and she had married publisher John Hasbrook. Sayer became a national leader in dress reform, temperance, and women's suffrage for the next 50 years. Mary was one of the original subscribers and began sending letters to the magazine on a regular basis. In December of 1857, she launched her career as a lecturer, speaking on dress reform and then issues the Basic to Women's Rights. She was elected one of the vice presidents of the National Dress Reform Association. The Civil War suddenly created a demand for physicians and surgeons. Excuse me. In October 1861, Mary left her practice in Rome, went to Washington, and applied for a commission as assistant surgeon in the Army. This request left the medical department stunned, for no other woman had dared suggest such a thing, and Surgeon General Finley implied that it never occurred to him that one ever would. While awaiting a decision, she volunteered to help wherever she was needed. She made herself useful by administering to the sick and wounded at a makeshift Indiana hospital housed in the U.S. Patent Office in Washington at the time. Dr. J.N. Green, the surgeon in charge, was impressed by her recommendations and her efforts. Green wrote a letter of recommendation for her, which Mary took to the Surgeon General and Assistant Surgeon General, but again, she was not granted a commission. Nevertheless, she relished her duties, even though she was not paid. She made rounds, met ambulances, prescribed medications, and helped determine appropriate treatments. Quoting from her notes, quote, "Every soul in the hospital has to abide by my orders just as much as though Dr. Green gave them," unquote. She also functioned as a hospital administrator, therapist, counselor, expediter, confessor, letter writer, and mother substitute. When Mary heard of stories of the deserters' prison in Alexandria, she gained admission by announcing to the guards, "I am Dr. Walker of the Union Army. I command you let me see and pass." And they did. They listened. She listened to many of the soldiers' stories and was convinced that several of the men were unjustly confined. With no concern for protocol, she went directly to the War Office of Secretary of War Stanton, from whom she secured a pardon and a pass for one of the prisoners. She soon became so well known that she was swamped with requests to expedite furloughs and prison releases for other soldiers. In early 1862, she left the Patent Office Hospital and went to New York City to qualify for another medical diploma at the Hygeia Therapeutic College. This is not unusual. Many physicians would attend several rounds of lectures at different medical schools and have degrees from several medical schools. One of the best Confederate surgeons attended his father's medical school in Winchester, then the University of Pennsylvania, and then Temple University. So he had 3 degrees in medicine, very commonly done then. Instructions there included lectures and clinics at Bellevue Hospital. She departed with a medical degree, her second degree, on March 31st, 1862. In October, she returned to Oswego to give a series of talks and write articles on dress reform. All during this time, she continued to wear her bloomerite clothing, which was comfortable, convenient, but also conspicuous. In November of 1862, these are just a series of events that I'll just relate some of them. She was at the headquarters of General Burnside near Warrenton, Virginia. Mary was now dressing in the blue officer's uniform, pants with gold stripe, a felt hat with a gold cord, and the green sash of the surgeon. Mary had heard that there were inadequate medical supplies and staff for a typhoid fever outbreak. She went directly to Burnside and urged him to move the sick to Washington. After he had agreed, Mary commandeered a train and, waving Burnside's letter, convinced the engineer to take a trainload of sick or wounded soldiers to Washington. Oops. I've been going backwards. There's General Burnside. Mary followed Burnside's army to Fredericksburg in December of 1862, where the Union Army suffered one of its worst defeats. She helped treat some of the 13,000 casualties. Dr. Preston King, who worked with Mary at Fredericksburg, presented to the Secretary of War an account of her volunteer work and use of personal funds to buy supplies for the soldiers, but she received neither reimbursement nor a commission. During 1863, she visited the hospitals in Washington, gathered a list of wounded from the Oswego area, and communicated reports between Washington and Oswego. She was instrumental in organizing the Women's Relief Association, ran a successful fundraising drive, and opened the house for, quote, unprotected females and children who are frequently found about the streets of Washington without friends, money, or home, unquote. Families would lose track of where their husband or brother or relative was, and they would go to Washington, but Washington was occupied by both troops, and there were no places for families to stay, so they would literally be out in the streets. Mary set up a home where they could stay there for free, and she financed all this herself. Sure. She also practiced medicine, was paid for that, and used that money to yep. So she was both treating patients, civilians, privately, right? In her many references to war experiences, Mary never referred specifically to performing major surgery. She became convinced that surgeons were often amputating unnecessarily and schemed with soldiers whom she felt did not require amputation, and to encourage them to refuse to submit to surgery. Mary's unique appearance caught the imagination of a reporter for the New York Tribune. It is the most colorful portrayal of her wartime appearance. And this is what he wrote. Among the unmarshaled host of camp followers of the Army, not the least noteworthy personage is Miss Mary E. Walker, or Dr. Walker, as she is usually styled. Dressed in male habiliments, with the exception of a girlish-looking straw hat decked off with an ostrich feather, with a petite figure and feminine features, the tout ensemble is quite engaging. Her reputation is unsullied, and she carries herself amid the camp with a jaunty air of dignity well calculated to receive the sincere respect of the soldiers. She can amputate a limb with the skill of an old surgeon and administer medicines equally as well. Strange to say that although she has frequently applied for a permanent position in the medical corps, she has never been formally assigned to any particular duty. We will add that the lady referred to is exceedingly popular among the soldiers in the hospital and is undoubtedly doing much good, unquote. In January 1864, she wrote to Lincoln, telling him of her volunteer services as an acting assistant surgeon in Washington and her inability to obtain a commission solely on account of her sex. She asked to be assigned to duty at the Douglas Hospital in the female ward, but with orders to go whenever and wherever there was a major battle to render aid in the field hospitals where, and this is from her letter, her energy, writing about herself in the third person, her energy, enthusiasm, professional abilities, and patriotism will be of the greatest service in inspiring the true soldier never to yield to the traitors and in attending the wounded brave, unquote. In less than a week, Lincoln replied in his own handwriting at the bottom of Mary's letter. For the Army is an organized system in the hands of men supposed to be learned in that profession, and I am sure it would injure the service for me with strong hand to thrust among them anyone, male or female, against their consent. If they are willing for Dr. Mary Walker to have charge of a female ward, if there be one, I also am willing, but I am sure controversy on the subject will not subserve the public interest. A. Lincoln, January 16, 1864. Now, about the same time, and at the same time be most useful. Mary was authorized to report to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Fate was on her side, for the assistant surgeon of the 52nd Ohio had died suddenly on January 1864 at Chattanooga, and a replacement was needed. To report to the Assistant Surgeon General at Chattanooga and meet with the Board of Medical Officers. The medical director of the Army of the Cumberland, Dr. Perrin, was resolved that the sick and wounded should not be entrusted to such a, quote, medical monstrosity, unquote. And he ordered a medical board to examine her qualifications. The board found her so inadequate, quote, as to render it is doubtful whether she pursued the study of medicine, unquote. However, given the circumstances of the board review, that seemed to have been a foregone conclusion. Despite Perrin's report, General George H. Thomas, commander of the Army of the Cumberland, personally oversaw her appointment as a contract surgeon. Now, a contract surgeon had no rank or commission. Was a private physician who was contracted by the Army to serve as a physician for the Army. An unidentified clipping editorialized, quote, "The young lady is very pretty and is said to thoroughly understand her profession. We imagine that the bitter pills which the sick in Colonel McCook's brigade take hereafter will be deprived of a great portion of their nausea by the fair hands which prescribe them," unquote. Since the 52nd Ohio was in winter quarters, she began to treat the sick in civilian families in the area. Mary passed through the picket lines daily and roamed far and wide to make sick calls. She brought Army medical supplies to many families, and many of the soldiers in her regiment believed her to be a spy. Years later, when questioned about the service which had won her the Medal of Honor, she pointed to her work with the destitute civilians near Chattanooga. Quote, "The special valor was for going into the enemy's ground when the inhabitants were suffering for professional services and sent to our lines to beg assistance, and no man surgeon was willing to respond for fear of being taken prisoner. And by my doing so, the people were won over to the Union," unquote. Now, you have to be careful what you find online. This is supposed to be a photograph of Mary with the 82nd Ohio, but you will see that Mary is wearing the typical dress which Mary would never wore, and she happens to be standing in front of a sign that says post office. But I think it's the postmistress for the 52nd Ohio Regiment, misidentified as Mary Walker. On April 10th, 1864, while on one of her expeditions, Mary took a wrong turn and was taken prisoner by a Confederate sentry. She was delivered to General G.H. Hill, and he in turn conveyed Mary to General Joseph Johnston. She remained at his headquarters for a week. Callers included several medical officers who questioned her to ascertain whether a woman was really qualified to be a physician. She was next taken to Dalton, Georgia, and transported by train to Richmond. News that a Yankee lady physician in bloomers was aboard the train proceeded the train by telegraph, and the curious turned out in droves at the various train stops. In Richmond, Mary was confined at Castle Thunder, a political prison. She retained her bloomers and endured the filth, scant, rancid food, vermin, and humid heat through the summer. The Richmond Examiner reported that she did not like her quarters and wished to go home. Quote, "She spent her confinement not in reading medical works, but devouring all the novel nonsense and trash that she could get hold of with a Negro character in them," unquote. It was also reported that she would not exchange her bloomer's outfit for one, quote, "more becoming of her sex," unquote. She had offered to treat the sick at the prison, but her offer was refused because the Confederates did not trust her. She was released on August 12, 1864, after 4 months of imprisonment. With several hundred other prisoners, she was placed aboard a Flag of Truce steamer and was taken to Fortress Monroe. And she was exchanged for a 6-foot Southern major, an event she never let others forget. And then headed for Nashville and General Sherman's front near Atlanta. She visited with her old brigade. Then in September 1864, there was a windfall payment in the sum of $434.66 for services as a contract physician from March 11th to August 23rd, 1864. Ironically, she had been a prisoner for 4 of the 5 months. This had been initiated by Colonel McCook of the 52nd Ohio Regiment and was favorably endorsed by General George Thomas. On October 5th, she was officially awarded a contract as acting assistant surgeon, U.S. Army, with a salary of $100 a month. That was the typical salary for a physician. As a female surgeon, she was unique in the annals of the Army and remained on duty in this capacity until the close of the war. Her initial assignment was dated September 1864 and was in the Women's Prison Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky. The cleanliness in the prison and would not allow prisoners to abuse each other or their small children, who were often in prison with them. After 6 months, she requested a transfer, even though the post-medical director greatly praised her efforts. In March of 1865, she was ordered to Nashville and was placed in charge of an orphan asylum and was made responsible for refugee families housed in the neighborhood. Her war service officially ended on June 15, 1865. It was at this point that her extensive notes, that was what she called it, she kept a detailed record of pretty much every day of her life. Mary returned to Richmond to celebrate July 4th in the Confederate capital. She was the principal attraction, resplendent in her surgeon's uniform on the steps of the Confederate Capitol. With the undivided attention of the Yankee audience, she read aloud Jefferson's Declaration of Independence. Throughout the summer and fall of 1865, Mary wrote President Johnston and Judge Advocate General Holt about securing a post-war commission. Her request was denied on November 2nd, 1865. However, 9 days later, on November 11th, 1865, Congress and President Johnson provided a more formal and climactic military farewell by awarding her the Medal of Honor for meritorious service. It read, and this is from her award. Whereas it appears from official records that Dr. Mary E. Walker, a graduate of medicine, has rendered valuable service to the government, and her efforts have been earnest and untiring in a variety of ways, and that she was assigned to duty and served as an assistant surgeon in charge of female prisoners at Louisville, Kentucky, upon the recommendation of Major Generals Sherman and Thomas, and faithfully served as contract surgeon in the service of the United States, and has devoted herself with much patriotic zeal to the sick and wounded soldiers, both in the field and hospital, to the detriment of her own health, and has endured hardships as a prisoner of war 4 months in a southern prison while acting as contract surgeon. And whereas by reason of her not being an honorable recognition of her services and suffering should be made. It is ordered that a testimonial therefore shall be hereby made and given to said Dr. Mary E. Walker, and that the usual Medal of Honor for meritorious services be given her, given under my hand in the city of Washington, D.C., this 11th day of November, A.D., 1865. Andrew Johnson, President. Edwin M. Stanton, Secretary of War. That was the medal. The National Republican newspaper published a copy of the bill along with the article. It, quote, "This order is handsomely inscribed upon parchment and is the only compensation under the law that the president is empowered to bestow upon the doctor because she happens to be a woman. Much of the service rendered by her to the government could not have been accomplished by a man," unquote. The Civil War years were Mary's most colorful, but for more than a full half century afterwards, she strove for a series of lost causes. While she practiced medicine sporadically, she blamed deterioration in her vision as a result of her imprisonment as the main reason why she could no longer practice consistently. Mary tried to have her $8.50 per month pension increased to that of a physician, but the Pension Bureau refused repeatedly. Finally, on May 23, 1898, her monthly pension was increased to $20. She became involved in a number of social issues. Her attentions were first drawn to the hundreds of nurses who served during the war but were denied pensions and other benefits. Mary and her associates had many bills introduced in the Congress, only to see them die in committee. She again became involved with the dress reform movement, which she had started before the war, but had temporarily put aside. She again wrote for Sybil magazine about clothing reform. She was arrested in New York City for immodest clothing. The police argued that the wearing of men's clothes by a woman was an offense. If she dressed in such a manner as to attract a crowd and cause public excitement, she should be arrested. But Mary presented an eloquent defense to the commissioner, who agreed that she had the right to wear her pantaloons. Her defense: "I don't wear men's clothes. I wear my own clothes," unquote. He then let her go with the admonition to his police department, never arrest her again. A cartoon editorial appeared in the New York Times, compared Mary to ladies with hoop skirts awry in the wind. The caption read, "Modesty according to law, but this pretty dear is not arrested because she does not violate the public sense of propriety." Oh no. You can see the women with the hoop skirts, wind blowing them up, showing their underwear, while Mary is arrested for immodest clothing. After this editorial and her defense, she was elected president of the National Dress Reform Association in Syracuse. In September 1866, Mary was invited to serve as a delegate to the Social Science Congress in Manchester, England. What was to be a vacation and a rest turned into a lecture series after her speech before the Congress. Britain should give equal rights to women. She predicted women would earn the right and privileges enjoyed by men within 10 years. She denied the charge that women would not use their judgment and would simply vote as their husbands did. She argued that honest differences between husbands and wives on political issues would enhance rather than undermine family relations. She insisted the wisdom of a vote varied with intelligence and had nothing to do with the gender of the voter. Following that presentation, the combination of her dress, personality, and speech captured the imagination of her audiences. They particularly enjoyed her stories about medical school and as a pioneer female physician. However, she was excoriated by the British medical press. But for over a year, she lectured throughout Britain and Scotland. She was invited to Paris to speak before returning to Washington months later. She began a U.S. speaking tour in 1868, speaking especially on the lack of women's rights. After her lecture tour, Mary completed a 180-page autobiographical book entitled It, H-I-T. The book was filled with her opinions on conjugal companionship, dress reform and health, tobacco and alcohol, labor, and citizenship. This was followed several years later by a second book entitled Unmasked, or The Science of Immorality. In both books, she addressed a number of social issues. This is from one of her books. Tobacco was a poison which ruined the digestive system and eventually poisoned every tissue. It produced paralysis and insanity, left its blight on the wife and children of smokers. Wives of smokers suffered nervous exhaustion from the air which tobacco contaminated. She called for a greater recognition of workers trying to achieve higher living standards and cautioned employers against overburdening their employees. She classified men ranging from a code 1, that is a man who truly respected his wife and treated her like with the same deference he gave his honored mother or sister. In the years immediately following her return to England, Mary devoted most of her time to supporting women's suffrage when she was not lecturing. She was at the crest of the women's rights movement, living in Washington and appearing on the same platform as Lucy Stone, Susan B. Anthony, Mary Livermore, and Beva Lockwood. She helped found the Women's Suffrage Association of Ohio and served as a member of the Central Women's Suffrage Bureau organized in Washington to coordinate activities. Mary received much press coverage because of her dress and personality. She spearheaded a voter registration movement in the District of Columbia. On Election Day, a large number of women presented themselves to the registration desk but were refused. The failure to obtain the ballot through mass registration convinced most of the suffragettes that success hinged upon an amendment to the Constitution. But Mary disagreed and was soon relegated to the radical fringe of the movement. Though an outsider now, she turned up after convention for more than 40 years. Simply put, persisted in this point of view even as the 19th Amendment snowballed towards victory. Her appearance before committees of Congress and in the New York State Legislature were now identified as hostile in opposition to the amendment. Quote, "I am opposed to granting men the right to vote on the rights of women," unquote. Her once friends in the suffrage movement now counted her as an enemy. In her later years, Mary spent more time on her farm near Oswego. She became more and more eccentric. She exalted her virtues and assumed an air of infallibility. She became intolerant of family and friends, and in her paranoia, she felt that people were deliberately trying to thwart her. Mary wore her Medal of Honor daily. It was her most cherished possession. In 1907, she received the replacement medal. That's the replacement medal with a new design. Recipients were supposed to return their old medal after receiving the replacement. Mary kept both. In 1917, the Board of Medal Awards, while reviewing the merits of Civil War awards, ruled Mary's was unwarranted. The medal was for valor, and there was nothing in the records to show a specific act upon which the decoration was awarded. She was one among 911 recipients who were disqualified. She reviewed the high in Oswego town. There's her stone there with a Medal of Honor plaque on it. Mary's story, however, did not end there, and her name kept popping up. In World War II, a Liberty ship was named after her. In 1960, a portrait of her was discovered in the Old Army Medical Museum in Washington. In 1976, Mrs. Helen Hay Wilson, a grandniece of Mary's, petitioned that the Medal of Honor be restored. On June 10, 1977, her Medal of Honor was officially and posthumously restored. In 1982, a stamp was issued by the Postal Service commemorating Mary on the 150th anniversary of her birth. The artist chose to represent Mary in a dark Victorian dress with a white collar and some lace. Her hair is done in the dark corkscrew curls. I think it's highly unlikely that Mary would have approved this appearance of her on the stamp, but it was based on a photograph taken during her London tour, or Britain tour. The medical facility at the State of New York University at Oswego was named in her honor, along with the Mary Walker Walt Whitman Clinic in Washington, D.C. In 2002, she was inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca Falls, New York. And on May 12th, 2012, a statue was unveiled by the Oswego Town Historical Society. Now, the rest in questions. Was Mary Walker the only female physician in the Union Army? There was no evidence to suggest that she was a homosexual. Likewise, she clearly was not a woman disguised as a soldier, as at least 400 women did to get into the Union Army. During the first year of the war, the physical exams were so cursory that at least 400 women disguised themselves as men and joined the Union Army. And the numbers are probably higher than that. It's got the Army to accept the nursing commission. Mary's struggles were carried out almost single-handedly. Whenever she appeared on the field, she was certain to wear the green waist sash of a surgeon. Question came up, did she operate, and one of the misconceptions about Army surgeons in general, after Surgeon General Hammond became Surgeon General in April of 1862, the first year of the war, all the horrible things you read about Civil War medicine did occur in that first year of the war. Hammond introduces a huge reform, and that's what historians often ignore or really don't focus on, all the advances that occurred in medicine after Hammond became Surgeon General. Among the many things was that only 1 out of every 15 surgeons actually performed major operations, and those were the most qualified surgeons. One was referred to as a surgeon. So Mary, as well as all the male physicians in the Civil War, were referred to as surgeons or assistant surgeons, even though only 1 in 15 actually operated. There were at least 6 other women doctors who took an active part in the war effort for the Union Army. Only 2 of them left some account of their war experiences. Walker's extensively documented her experience and her incidents connected with the Army, all the more important since it was rare to find a woman physician's account of her participation in the Civil War. Several other female doctors provided nursing services. Oriana Russell Moon graduated from the Female Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1857 and enlisted as a nurse in the medical department of the Confederacy. She then married a physician and worked with him treating wounded, but most likely as a nurse rather than a physician, since there was no hard evidence to support a claim as a commissioned surgeon. Whoops, go back to that. Ah, what the heck? What did I do? Hang on a minute. See if I can get that back. There we go. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to get that one slide because you asked that question. This was written by the Confederate Surgeon General about the woman. She was a lady of high character and of fine intelligence, and although she failed to distinguish herself as a physician, she made an excellent nurse. Unfortunately for her professional prospects, she fell in love with one of our assistant surgeons and devoted herself to the care of her own babies like a sensible woman. In my humble judgment, no one possessing a womb or endowed with the attributes of femininity ought to dream of entering the ranks of the medical profession. That was the Confederate Surgeon General writing about that physician, female physician, one of his assistant surgeons. In the North, Chloe Annette Backel, who wrote a 32-page letter to the Pension Bureau to support a pension claim, and Dr. Mary Frame Myers Thomas both worked as nurses for the Indiana Sanitary Commission. I think I'm going to give up on that. Dr. Esther Hill Hanks, who trained at the New England Female Medical College in Boston, was rejected by both the Army and Dorothea Dix because she was not plain enough to be a nurse. She kept a diary of her activities, which were never meant for public viewing. Dr. Sarah Ann Chadwick Clapp also served as a volunteer assistant surgeon in the 7th Illinois Volunteer Cavalry for 10 months, much as Mary had served as a volunteer at the Indiana Hospital early on in the war. So it appears that Mary was the only woman to be officially awarded a contract from the Army. And so she is the only official woman who served as a physician. The second question, was Mary Walker a spy for the Union Army? release from Castle Thunder, Judge Advocate General stated Walker, quote, passed frequently beyond our lines far within those of the enemy, and at one time gained information that led General Sherman to so modify his strategic operations as to save himself from a serious reverse and obtain success where defeat before seemed to be inevitable, unquote. When captured, she had no incriminating documents on her, but she seemed to have every intention of spying if given the opportunity. General George Thomas indicated that, quote, she desired to be sent to the 52nd Ohio as assistant acting surgeon so that she might get through our lines and get information on the enemy. I consented to let her go, and she was soon afterwards captured, unquote. A reply from the Assistant Adjutant General Townsend implied she was engaged in gathering information. Quote, is there anything due to the woman? And if so, what amount for Secret Service or for other services? The object is to give her some funds in her need if anything is due, unquote. A letter Mary herself wrote to Secretary of War Stanton made it clear that spying on the enemy was on her agenda. Quote, any Secret Service that your honorable body may wish performed will find in me one eminently fitted to do it, unquote. After the war, the government admitted that Mary wandered outside the lines, quote, in accordance with a preconcerted arrangement between her and federal officers. Dr. Walker thinking she might obtain information while in the hands of the enemy, which would be of value to the federal officers, unquote. So it seems fairly clear that Mary was also a spy. Now, next question. Did Mary Walker deserve to be awarded the Medal of Honor? She did not earn it for actions on the battlefield under the traditional circumstances for which the award is presently granted. 8 physicians were awarded the Medal of Honor during the Civil War. Some of the Medals of Honor were awarded to soldiers for political reasons or for sentimental reasons. Mary's medal was definitely not awarded to her because it was politically correct to honor a woman in the Civil War. If that were the case, there were other probably more deserving women like Mother Bickerdike or Dorothea Dix or Clara Barton. So this was not a politically correct decision. Judge Advocate reevaluated her qualifications for the medal and stated that, quote, despite the apparent discrimination because of her sex, the award appears to have been appropriate. On June 10, 1977, the official records regarding Walker's case were corrected. Now, many stories about Mary were exaggerated as a result of the unsubstantiated newspaper stories. The article that claimed that she could amputate with the best of male surgeons is a good example of that. Or that she wore pants because she was too lazy to wash her legs, or she wore such garments in order to display her legs, or the story that it was an act of Congress that would allow her to wear pants during the war. Those are probably the 3 biggest things. I don't know if I can change this. There's a quote. I want to end with Mary. Okay. Basically, Mary says in her quote, uh, the public doesn't recognize what a person is accomplishing when they're alive, but only when they're dead will they pile rocks on their graves. uh, so that was Mary's view of that. The one picture I saw of Mary at the museum in Oswego, New York, where her second Medal of Honor is on display. Uh, she's in her final dress coat, which is like a tuxedo, and she wanted to see what she would look like in her coffin, and so she had a picture taken of her lying in a coffin with a big smile on her face with her Medal of Honor. But they wouldn't give me a copy of that photograph. I want to just end by saying that Dr. Walker lived her life in the moment and never stopped her tireless efforts to create equality and civil rights for women. As eccentric as she was also a seer of women's dress reform, of women's social equality, women's suffrage, and women's destinies. Thank you. Any questions I can answer about Mary? Oh, probably the majority of medals of honor are actually awarded during the Civil War, that period. Of the 911 that were rescinded, almost 300 of them were from one regiment. And the way that came about was that this was the I think if I recall correctly, it was the 28th Maine, 27th or 28th Maine Regiment, and there was a major battle that was shaping up, and they were an experienced regiment, and they were due to be released in the next several days. And there was no way they could force that regiment to stay until the battle was over. So what was presented to Stanton was, is there anything we can do to have these men not go home before this battle occurs? And Stanton says, give them a medal. And so all 300 of the regiment were given a Medal of Honor. I don't remember which battle that was. I don't even know if they were engaged in that battle, but they said give them all a medal if they'll stay active for another 30 days. So that's just one example of 300 of those medals that were rescinded. But yeah. Buffalo Bill Cody got one, not for the Civil War, but there were a number of civilians who got medals of honor. So the largest number of medals of honor were awarded in the Civil War period. Excuse me? The first medals of honor were issued in the Civil War. Yeah, they don't go back. They don't go back any further. It was in the post-war period that there were some civilians like Buffalo Bill Cody that recognized the first Medal of Honor by date of action goes to Sergeant Brownell, who was the soldier who killed the innkeeper by the name of Jackson, who shot Elmer Ellsworth, the Union officer who removed the flag in Alexandria, Virginia. This occurred several weeks after Fort Sumter, when the Army decided to because Alexandria, Virginia was just across the river from Washington, and the Union Army wanted to occupy it. on a boarding house. Jackson, who was the innkeeper at the boarding house, was flying an enormous Confederate flag, a garrison-sized flag that Lincoln could see from the White House with field glasses. Elmer Ellsworth had been Lincoln's law clerk before the war, and when the war started, Ellsworth in 10 days organized a regiment. That was one of the first regiments to arrive in Washington. But he had been a favorite of the Lincoln family. While the Lincolns were in Springfield, he had often visited the family. Mrs. Lincoln considered him like a younger brother. Mrs. Lincoln considered him a replacement for her eldest son, Robert, who was at Harvard. So it was nice to have the same age as Robert, a frequent guest at the Lincoln House. So the Union Army sends 3 regiments to occupy Alexandria. The Confederates abandon Alexandria before the regiments get there, so there's actually no fighting in Alexandria. And Ellsworth's regiment is supposed to take the telegraph station, the railroad station, and a couple of other sites. And as he's going down the street, he walks by the Marshall House. He remembers the flag is flying up top. He climbs up to the 3rd floor, out into the roof, cuts down the flag, and he's carrying the flag down the stairs when Jackson, who's the inn owner, with a double-barreled shotgun, shoots and kills Ellsworth. Brownell is one of the soldiers accompanying Ellsworth, and Brownell will shoot and kill Jackson. He will later be awarded the first Medal of Honor by incident, but it won't be until after the war that he receives the Medal of Honor. So there are 2 ways to look at Medals of Honor. By incident, what are you receiving the Medal of Honor for, time-wise? So that was the very first Medal of Honor, but he doesn't receive that until I think it's in 1871. After the war, the paperwork is submitted. Yeah, almost a year. Yep. There were about 50 Medals of Honor awarded during the Indian Wars, after post-Civil War. So from 1865 to about 1900. There are a number of Medal of Honors at Gettysburg that were. I don't remember the exact number, but yeah, there were a number there, including Joshua Chamberlain for his defense of Little Round Top. Yeah. Yes. I mean, right. She was never on the battlefield like Claire Barton, for example. Claire Barton was actually physically on the battlefield while the battle was going on. And in fact, the most memorable thing about Claire Barton was at the Battle of Antietam. She was helping a young officer who had been hit, and she was giving him a drink of water, and a bullet will pass through her dress and into his chest, killing him. So she was actually on the battlefield. Mary would be at the field hospitals behind the lines. No. This is the Confederate Surgeon General talking about a Confederate a woman who was a physician in the Confederate Army, but had married one of his surgeons and served as he says, she was serving as a nurse rather than a physician. She never had an official commission as a surgeon. Yeah, so the only one that officially there are records of is Mary. Oh yeah, she was nurse, spy, and soldier. Right. Yes. Yeah. But not as a physician. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. There are fascinating stories in the Civil War. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Mhm. Yes. Yes. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That was yeah. Bill Case wrote that. Uh, yeah, it's it's a pristine battlefield in that. The, well, it's where Delta Force trains. It's in the area that Delta Force trains, and it's not in the artillery landing range, but artillery goes over it. So you can only go there. The base historian has indicated to my Civil War Roundtable that he would be willing to take a group there. If we, it would have to be at a time when there's no artillery firing and nothing going on at the the Army Rangers training there, and it has to be by bus. In fact, in the October newsletter, which I'm working on now, I've put that as I need. We would need a reasonable commitment from the number of people who would want to go. Yeah, by by a reasonable commitment, we would have to hire a bus, and we would all have to fill out paperwork ahead of time to be you're given a pass to be on the. Oh yeah, no, he will accompany us. The historian will accompany us, and we'll do the presentation there. But at the not the trees there are not the trees back at the time of the battle, but it's the same. It's the same forest. The road is not quite the original road there. The original road is not very far away, but the swamp is there. Uh, uh, yeah, there's a portion of the original road there. There is a crossroads there, but it's a modern. All it is a dirt track. Yeah, they took I believe they took long what is it Long Street. That's the main road that cuts in from Hope County to and then there are several churches there that are the original churches. There are church cemeteries there. There's a small cemetery at Monroe's Crossing. Uh, if we get a commitment from a number of members, then we'll probably pursue a visit to Monroe's Crossroads. We'll rent the bus, and we'll do that probably in January or February when the bug population is at its lowest. uh, I was there once years ago with a group of four of us where he knew uh, uh, was one of the former presidents of the Roundtable, and he knew the historian back then, and so we just parked at one location outside the base, and we all went in his car. So there were just four of us. So I had a tour of that battlefield. Geez, it must have been 2010, something like that. Just once, yeah. But it's uh, one of our members had a tour about a month ago. He met the historian, and it was just he, the historian, and one or two other people. And that's when he said, if a larger group wants to come, it could be done, but it could be done with a bus where he's not going to have a convoy of cars going in there. Yeah, but that's the Civil War, the only Civil War battlefield within the county. Actually, technically, it's not within the county yet. Have you been to Eversboro? That's a nice battlefield. That's near Bentonville. It's a few miles from Bentonville. Yeah, Eversboro occurs a few days before Bentonville. It's a rear guard action. Uh, it's a small battlefield, but separate from Bentonville. Yeah, yeah. Eversboro is it's a small battlefield, and it's just a rear guard action that's fought there. But there's a there are some there's a small cemetery there. There are some information boards there, and there's a small museum there. It's a nice museum. It's run by the Friends of Eversboro. It's not a state site. And Bentonville is a state site, and so it's open all the time. Bentonville is going to get a new visitor center too. Bentonville is the last. It's in March of 1865. It's the largest battle that occurs in North Carolina, and it occurs just before Lee's surrender. Lee will surrender April 9th at Appomattox. Johnson's fight is, I think it's the 17th through the 19th. Bentonville? Yeah. Yeah, that's a reconstructed house of what the cabin looked like. There's a visitor center there. The farmhouse, it's a replica of the original farmhouse. I don't think it. I don't. There might be a portion of it that might be original. Yeah. Oh, right. That's the Harper House, right? Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking ahead to Bennett Farm. Yeah, right. Yeah, the Harper House was a plantation house that was used as a hospital. Yeah, and I think one or two of the slave cabins may be original there. Yeah.
So, yeah, they have the same terms as that happened. And I always thought that the Confederates were able to keep their arms if they weren't.
The officers were allowed to keep their sidearms. The surrender at Bennett Place is it's a 3 different day event. The original surrender, when Johnson and Sherman meet at the farm there, is on the I think it's April 19th, and Sherman. That's between Sherman and Johnson, and the first thing Sherman will do is give Johnson the telegram that he received just the day before that Lincoln had died. Sherman just found out the day before, the telegram got to him, and Joe Johnson didn't know anything about it. And so Sherman presented that to Johnson. He wanted to see what Johnson's response would be. And he described Johnson's response was shock. What Sherman feared was that Johnson might take heart with this and maybe not surrender. But it turned out to be just the opposite. Johnson said he feared that this would be worse for the Confederacy. Okay. But they'll come to terms, and actually Sherman will give Johnson better terms than Grant gave Lee at Appomattox. It was the same terms as far as officers keeping sidearms, and can keep their horses, the men can keep their baggage. But Sherman also said Sherman was also accepting the surrender of other forces. Well, Johnson was surrendering roughly 90,000 troops, but they were not there. They were scattered all over the place, and including the surrender of naval forces, which were still, in various ports and things like that. And there were relatively few Confederate troops nearby. But Sherman will also say that Confederates who were political officers, like mayors or sheriffs and things, they could go back to that. Okay, so that was included in Sherman's. But Sherman said, this has to be approved by the War Department. So the surrender terms will be sent back to Stanton. And Stanton, now that Lincoln's been assassinated and dead, Stanton says no, absolutely no. And Stanton tells Grant, you go to Bentonville, to Bennett Place or Bennett Farm, and handle the surrender. But Grant will telegraph Sherman and tell Sherman, give him the same terms that I gave Lee. And on the 25th, they'll meet again, and that's the two men will meet along with their staff, and Sherman will say, the terms are not agreeable to the Secretary of War. And then both men will leave their staff officers to decide on the terms. And of course, Sherman has told his staff officers the same terms as what Lee got. And so the staff officers will decide that, and the next day will be the official signing. I think it's the 26th. So there are actually three different meetings: the 19th, the first meeting of the two generals, the terms. Then the next meeting is several days later, the rejection of the terms, and then the next day is the acceptance of the new terms. Yeah, I'm from upstate New York. Good, right? Yeah, proportionally, right. Right. They were the first to ban slavery before the state even formed, right? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right. You mean you mean the Battle of Bennington in New York City? Right. Right. Yeah, you should go up to if you want a nice day trip. Go up to Guilford Courthouse. It's go up Interstate 70, 73, 74 to Greensboro. Yeah, Guilford Courthouse is there. That's the big battle fought in this area. And that's when Cornwallis will fight Greene at that point. This is it's a Pyrrhic victory for Cornwallis, and it's after that victory. I mean, he'll lose a quarter of his army there. He'll march through Moore County on his way to Wilmington and head up to Yorktown. So it's the last battle in the Carolinas before before the surrender at Yorktown. But it's a small battlefield. They have two excellent movies. There's and it's a nice museum there. One movie that talks about the battle itself, and the other short movie is they're both relatively recently made, like within the past 15 years. Talks about interviewing the various peoples there, the soldiers and the civilians and whatnot. They're all reenactors, of course, but it's a nice drive up. It takes about an hour and a half to get there. Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to go in the Greensboro. This will be Guilford Courthouse is kind of I guess it would be like slightly northwest of Greensville. So you don't have to go to Greensville proper. So you don't get caught in all of Greensville traffic. You can go up. It's an hour and a half to get up there. It's you could spend a couple hours. It's a small battlefield. You can drive around it at a few stopping points, have a nice lunch, and then drive back.
I'm originally from New Jersey. We have a lot of,
Oh yeah.
I mean, I taught mom with
Oh, from the battlefield.
my co-teacher, she lived on a farm. The family had it from that time.
Ah.
She had cannonball, that kind of stuff collected. So, we were raised on that.
Wow. Yes.
But I